Day brings new picks from President-elect Donald Trump to fill out his cabinet. Trump has nominated Fox News host and ex-congressman, former reality TV star, Sean Duffy to lead the Department of Transportation. If confirmed, he will head aviation, automotive, rail, and transit.
President-elect Trump also announced that he wants Chris Wright, a Colorado oil and gas executive who denies that the world faces a climate crisis, to serve as Department of Energy Secretary. But one cabinet position is still hanging in the balance. Trump is seeking new candidates to be Treasury Secretary after his two frontrunners reportedly have found themselves in the midst of internal infighting at Mar-a-Lago. Co-chair Howard Lutnick, who heads up Trump's transition and was head of the investment firm Cantor Fitzgerald, was thought to be a shoo-in. But reports out of Mar-a-Lago have emerged that Lutnick is defying the usual way that you can court favour with Trump by talking to the press and trying to steal the spotlight.
Others are backing hedge fund executive Scott Bessent, and Trump is now looking to former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh and Apollo Management CEO Mark Rowan. Meanwhile, Trump ally Elon Musk has tapped an outspoken ally of Elon Musk and a critic of big tech, Brendan Carr, to lead the Federal Communications Commission. Carr is currently on the commission. He is on the FCC. This would be to become its permanent head. He also authored aspects of the conservative blueprint Project 2025. In the portion of the document that he was responsible for, Brendan Carr argued that the agency should regulate the largest tech companies such as Apple, Meta, Google, and Microsoft, which I don't think is particularly controversial, but he also said that the agency's top priorities should be, quote, reining in big tech, promoting national security, unleashing economic prosperity, and ensuring FCC accountability and good governance. Carr also wrote on X last week, "We must dismantle the censorship cartel and restore free speech rights for everyday Americans."
President-elect Trump said in a Truth Social statement on Sunday, quote, "Commissioner Carr is a warrior for free speech and has fought against the regulatory lawfare that has stifled Americans' freedoms and held back our economy," end quote. It is important to remember that the FCC has jurisdiction over local TV and radio licenses. Carr was quick to claim that NBC violated FCC rules in October. That was when the broadcaster let the then presidential nominee, Vice President Harris, appear on Saturday Night Live, with her offering Trump the chance to do so. Now, as it happens, Trump was then later offered time at the end of a NASCAR race for 60-second messages free of charge. Meanwhile, Carr has been vocal on his willingness to punish, Trump that is, has been vocal on his willingness to punish American TV networks over what he has called biases. Carr poses the possibility that the FCC could soon, in the words of its critics, become a political weapon for the GOP.
Another name floating around is James Braid, the former J.D. Vance staffer, who has been bandying about as a possible director of legislative affairs. Per Bloomberg, quote, Braid has worked in Vance's Senate office as deputy chief of staff and also worked for the Office of Management and Budget during Trump's first term. If officially named to serve as the White House's congressional liaison, he'll be charged with pushing Trump's legislative agenda on Capitol Hill. And we are receiving word, the Hill has reported, based on one source, that Lutnick will be the pick, not Bessent. So that would show, again, the influence of Elon Musk, given that that is his preference. I don't know that much about either individual, but there you have it.
Yeah.
The Hill reports it will be Lutnick.
Yeah, I don't know enormous amounts about either of them or the other people who had been in the frame. Obviously, if it is Lutnick, that is, a member of the Trump transition who had been said to be aggravating Trump a bit by purportedly publicity-seeking habits. I do think it's interesting that for the post of Treasury Secretary, the more colourful and controversial names did not really come into the frame for this one. That may speak to the fact that Trump takes the economy almost more seriously, I think, than anything else, and that there is less of an appetite, even on his part, for a sort of technicolor controversialist than of the type that he has chosen for other roles. So we shall see whether that pays off or not.
So Brendan Carr for the FCC, that is someone I know a decent amount about. I've met him before. I've spoken with him. Important to note, he was already part of the FCC. This is an appointment to lead the FCC. He recently was in the news because he was outspoken about the Kamala SNL appearance. He gave commentary subsequently on Fox News that should be looked into to see if it's a violation of the equal time rule. He did not assert that it was definitively a violation of the equal time rule, just that it deserved further scrutiny. He's an opponent of net neutrality. He does, however, support some tweaks or changes to Section 230. And I mean, I agree with him that censorship, to the extent the federal government is participating in censorship schemes, that is bad. Obviously, major communications companies are to some degree and should be subjected to the regulations of the federal government. I would like those to be as hands-off as possible, and I'm not sure to what extent he agrees with that. There is the whole break up big tech sort of philosophy that became for a while very dominant on the right in addition to the left. But then I think when all the revelations came out that so much of the bad moderation and censorship behavior was actually motivated by pressure from federal agencies, that that sentiment died off a little bit, although it still does exist to some degree on the right. Josh Hawley and J.D. Vance remain major proponents of massive new regulations on large media companies that they think are unfriendly to conservatives. So it'll be interesting to see that ideological battle play out at places like the FCC and other branches of the government.
Yeah, I'm genuinely interested in this, and I don't know and have never met Mr. Carr, so I can't speak to that respect. But one of the things that puzzles me about this element of the right, which you're more familiar with, is whether it is anti-censorship or anti-opinions it doesn't like. I mean, there is this argument of Elon's famous free speech warrior thing, and then it seemed to be clear that there were certain opinions that he didn't like that were at least deprioritized to some extent on that platform. In relation to Mr. Carr, so he seems to say, to the point about Section 230, he doesn't agree with you on that, right? I mean, you're more hands-off.
I would not change. I think changing it will get worse outcomes.
Right.
I mean, look, Section 230 is a law. It could be changed by the legislature. Like, it doesn't. It's not baked into. It's not sacred to us the way the First Amendment or something really is probably sacred. Like, if Congress wanted to revisit it, they could change. What it is, I've talked about this on the show a lot, but it's a liability shield for internet companies that. If you write something on Facebook, if you write something on X, if you write something in the comments of YouTube, and it's libelous, you can be sued, but the platform can't. That is, and some conservatives will describe, or even some on the left, will describe that as a special perk that internet companies get that no other company gets. And they're not totally wrong about that. That is their most compelling argument, because a book publisher, you could, if I write something that's libelous in a book that Simon & Schuster published, you can sue me and you can sue Simon & Schuster. If I write something libelous at Reason Magazine, you can sue me and Reason Magazine. But if I write it on Facebook, you can only sue me, you can't sue Facebook. So that allows internet companies to grant greater, more freewheeling and open than other platforms. Now, I would say that's a good thing. The argument conservatives, probably Brendan Carr, I don't know exactly what his argument is, but that I've heard from other conservatives, certainly from like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and J.D. Vance, is that, well, if they're going to get this special privilege, this immunity from liability, then in order to deserve that, they need to not moderate content in an ideologically unfair way. Now, under the current law, they can moderate content in whatever ideologically unfair they want. That's not in the current law. It doesn't say you only get this protection if you do X, Y, and Z. So sometimes I hear that misunderstanding. They say, well, this is premised on them not moderating in an unfair way. No. It specifically gives them this no matter what they do. Yep. So they could change the law to say in order to qualify for this protection, for this immunity from liability, you have to satisfy a bunch of criteria. I don't think that's...
Sorry to interrupt you, that would be people like Ted Cruz would be the arbiters of what the criteria of neutrality was, though, no?
Yes, and how the argument I use against conservative, when I say we shouldn't revisit this, is it won't be just Ted Cruz. It will be a commission of Ted Cruz and Elizabeth Warren, and you will end up Democrats are so eager, I'm trying to convince conservatives. Sure. Democrats will be eager to sink their teeth into this law and craft into it more reasons for social media companies to have to take down speech, and that this will not benefit conservatives whatsoever. Now, I think there are some tweaks you could make to Section 230 to make the internet a healthy place. For instance, there are existing exceptions for sexually abusive material. They do have some responsibility to take that down. Criminal material. You could, for instance, have stronger protections for revenge porn, for posting other people's, if it's underage, they have to do something about it. But if it's not underage, under existing law, they actually don't have to do anything. You can scream into the internet that your nude photos are out there, and they don't have to do anything about it. They probably will, but they don't have to. Could you change the law to say, like copyright infringement, they have to take something down? Yes, and I would be in favor of that. But revisiting the subject at all will create an opportunity for legislators to, I think, gut existing protections for free speech.
No, I just think, we'll probably return to this topic some other time because there's so much to talk about within it. I just personally find it quite peculiar that in that Trump MAGA world, and I know you're not a huge defender of the president-elect, but in that world, there are lots of people who portray themselves as crusaders for free speech, while Trump is arguing that, like, CBS should lose its broadcast license for saying things that are displeasing to him. That seems a completely inconsistent position.
Yeah, that's not the way I would go. I mean, whatever the laws are regarding equal time and such things should be applied equally to both sides. And if I was to defend the conservative perspective or the MAGA perspective, I'd say they feel like all of these systems and laws, or many of them, have been used against conservatives but not used against liberals, and so it's very much well, now we control them and we will use them against liberals. And I'm saying it's a textbook Lord of the Rings sort of argument. No, Boromir says we must use the ring against Sauron. Now we have it in our possession. But no, you can never use the ring. You must destroy it in the fires of Mount Doom, where I hope many restrictions on our free speech go to die.
I have nothing to add to that.
Well, we've got a lot more to talk about today on Rising. Please stay tuned and keep watching.